Okay, you guys. So, why didn't anybody tell me about this before I started to open up my mouth about this Diddy lawsuit? No one told me about this stuff. I had no idea that all this happened. Where earlier this year, shortly after Cassie's lawsuit dropped and he settled it right away. Apparently, he settled Cassie's lawsuit around November 2023. And at that time, he was in conflict in court. He had a court case going on with this liquor company called Diageo. And Diageo has very deep tentacles with companies like Vanguard and other very powerful global conglomerates that are based in the United States. So Diageo is his major liquor brand, and they were handling some tequila brand for Diddy um, called DeLeón. He had a tequila brand called DeLeón. Nobody told me about this, which I think is itself a form of malpractice, right? This is malpractice. You need to tell me these things before I start to open up my mouth. So apparently, Diddy settled the law. Diddy accused the Diageo of racism. He said that because he's black, they treated his brand poorly because of racism. And he compared his brand DeLeón to George Clooney's brand Casamigos and others. And he said that, the company, I guess, put a lot of money into the marketing and so on for those brands, but not into his DeLeón. While he was in the middle of this lawsuit, Cassie's $30 million suit dropped, and he quickly settled that the very next day. Right? Then in January, which is about 2 months later, he also settled this lawsuit with Diageo. Nobody told me about that. And in March, 2 months later, the feds raided him in a show of force that I personally have never seen in my life, where even two of his sons, who were not subjects of this investigation, to my understanding, were handcuffed, right, in their Miami home, or was it Los Angeles, wherever the bleep it is, because he's got a lot of homes, right? Handcuffed. A show of force like I have never seen. And they confiscated many things, including 1,000 bottles of baby oil. Now, you may ask me, well, what does the baby oil have to do with anything? I don't know, but apparently it is a massive indication of massive crimes that should result in this man spending the rest of his natural life in a federal penitentiary, because anybody who buys 1,000 bottles of baby oil has got to be a felon who has committed egregious acts that are against the laws of the United States and probably international law for that matter, because they've been looking for people all over the world, in England, in Australia, trying to get more victims of the baby oil, whatever he did with the baby oil, okay? So this was all found in the March raid of this man's home. The show of force by the Homeland Security and so on was something that I think was unprecedented. I mean, not even Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein were raided in this, and this is my word, grotesque way. It was grotesque. I mean, when you saw that, you knew something serious had gone down, and this man had committed egregious criminal acts. That would be your conclusion if you are an average person in society looking at this. But the timing of all of this is very, very suspicious, you guys. Because at that time, again, he was in a major lawsuit, a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit with this alcohol giant Diageo. And he had just reached a settlement with them in January. And by March, he was being raided. And November prior, is when Cassie's lawsuit dropped. And Cassie's lawsuit dropped years after she had broken up with the diddler. They call him the diddler. There's this one guy who calls him the diddler. You guys, this case is much more complicated than we thought. And it makes complete sense according to how my knee-jerk reaction is that he's being set up. He has been set up. He has been set up to look like a monster who should spend the rest of his life in jail. And whoever released that video to the press, to CBS, intended for that to be the narrative in the society. Because once they got their hands on that video and they saw what had happened 6 years ago, and Cassie had not said anything about it, right? Cassie had not said anything about it. And that's important and that's interesting. She had not said anything about that for 6 years. They broke up. She went on with her life. She got a husband. She has her 2 children. She was not preoccupied with this, at least it doesn't appear, until 6 years later when her ex-boyfriend was in the midst of a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit with an alcohol giant called Diageo. Suddenly, she brings the lawsuit and she gets her $30 million. And shortly thereafter, there's this massive raid of this man's homes where he's now accused of racketeering, which by definition means that he's running a business enterprise that is criminal, and he engages in criminal acts with this enterprise for commercial gain, right? And they're using this video of Cassie, and they're telling us that this man had these freak-offs, and he had sex slaves who were prostitutes at these freak-offs, which makes absolutely no sense. If you're a slave, you're not getting paid. If you're a prostitute, it's because you're getting paid for sex, which you should not be getting paid for sex in America because, sex cannot be sold as a commercial product, right? So all of a sudden they bring all this gook and they throw it at this guy after they diffuse this damning video of this guy, right? To tell us that he's a wife beater, which is terrible. I don't like wife beaters. I don't. The one man in my life to date now is my father, and he never laid his hand on my mother, right? So I don't know what that means. My grandmother, on the other hand, she was beaten by her husband. And so I don't have a very good, I don't have a good opinion of men who beat women, right? I don't like them, right? But at the same time, who likes men who beats women? Nobody, really. But at the same time, when you don't mix up your issues with me. Don't try to take me for a ride. No pun intended, okay? Don't take me for an idiot. The fact that this man beat up his girlfriend anywhere, whether at home, in a hotel, wherever, he laid his hands on her even one time, is inexcusable. But it's not racketeering, right? And freak-offs are not against American law. If that, for that matter, as far as I'm concerned, the minute you take your clothes off with somebody else, even if it's just the two of you, you're freaking off, right? And if freak-offs are against the law, everybody should go to jail, right? Everybody should go to jail. So that's just stupid, right? The fact that he did this with men, I don't care. As long as he's not my husband and I'm not sleeping with him, I don't care who he sleeps with, right? It's not my business. It's nobody's business what went on in this man's private, intimate life, right? He chose to videotape that as long as the people who were there knew they were being videotaped, and it seems like they did because all of them mentioned it in their lawsuits. They knew that they were being videotaped. Then he has committed no harm, no foul. It's in the privacy of his own home or in his intimate life. So this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This idea that he trafficked people for prostitution doesn't make any sense. You just said he had sex slaves, A. And B, is there a law against paying for somebody's plane ticket or train fare to come to see you? I don't think so, right? And if when you show up to see your buddy or your, I don't know, people have their friends online or whatever they're doing. I have no idea. I'm in my little whatever this is over here, right? But I mean, people are doing what people are doing. That's not my business, right? This lawsuit doesn't make sense. And I'm sitting here thinking, this doesn't make any sense. This man has been set up. Somebody wants this man to go to jail for the rest of his life, and they're going to use that video of Cassie where he beat his girlfriend to say that he's guilty of all kinds of other crimes. I mean, if they said that he robbed, Barclays Bank or Chase Bank of $10 billion, people would believe that because they saw that video. That's how irrational and wacko people can be. They can believe anything without actual proof of it, right? Or even if they see proof to the contrary, once they have an idea in their heads, you're done. And that was the whole point of diffusing that video about this man, which there should be consequences for what he did. And there have been consequences. He paid her $30 million, right? He paid her $30 million. Should he go to jail for it? I mean, if they said he had to spend a year to 5 years in prison for it, as I have said, I'm not going to be the one saying it's a foul ball, because what he did must, he must pay the consequences. You don't do that. You just don't, Puffy, right? But now you tell me that all of this other backstory was going on and nobody bothered to inform me of this. And is this what the feds are talking about when they talk about racketeering? Because if this is related to, if the racketeering charges are relating to whatever was going on with the alcohol deals that he had with Diageo, then okay, we can talk about that. Give me more details about that. That makes some sense. But don't tell me that he freaked off with his girlfriend and he videotaped the freak off, and so therefore he's a racketeer who should spend the rest of his life in jail, or that he hit his girlfriend and that he should spend the rest of his life in jail. A lot of men, I would say at least, but I don't even want to say 50%, but a lot of men hit the women in their lives. They just do, right? And they should face consequences. But I would not say that the rest of their life in prison is an appropriate consequence, especially if the woman has no bruises on her. She doesn't have any broken limbs. He didn't leave her in brain damage. She's still alive. She still can bear children. I mean, if you think about it, Cassie, look at Cassie. She's in perfect health. She has no bruises. She's doing very well. So yes, there should be consequences, but the rest of his life in prison consequences, I don't think that punishment would fit that particular crime, right? But if you tell me that something with this Diageo deal went down that was tantamount to racketeering, where there were criminal conduct, criminal activities that resulted in a commercial gain, because he apparently made hundreds of millions on this Diageo deal. And then my question is, why is he a criminal and not Diageo, right? Because he wasn't in this alone. So are they going to be indicting the CEOs of Diageo? I mean, with all due respect, I'm just asking. I don't know. I'm just asking the question, because this indictment to me is so insufficient on its face that I don't see how his attorneys have not moved. Well, I guess I can see they are going to move to dismiss, but they need to line up their ducks first. They need to first suppress that video of the Cassie beating. Among other things, they need to do that investigation as to who leaked that video. They need to subpoena records. And I don't really know how that works. I mean, can you subpoena CBS to can you force them to tell you where they got that video? I don't know, because the press does have certain privileges, if you will, right? Under the First Amendment. So I don't know how that would actually work, but you would have to get to the bottom of how that video was diffused, right? Because it seems to me, it seems obvious to me that video gives the prosecution an unfair advantage in the court of public opinion. Certainly, It has inflamed the public against this man to a level that I do think, honestly, that it's impossible for him to get a fair trial. And I think it was the intent of whomever did that to set this man up to spend the rest of his life in jail, and using the pretext that he beat up his girlfriend, who he paid $30 million, who is perfectly fine, who now has gone on to get married and have 2 children, has no bruises, no broken bones, nothing, right? That doesn't mean it's okay. Please be clear. I'm not saying that what he did was okay. What he did is inexcusable. He should pay restitution. $30 million is good. Maybe some jail time, some community service, mandatory counseling about physical abuse, etc., but not the rest of his life in prison. And don't tell me that what he did with Cassie was, sex trafficking and prostitution and racketeering. I mean, I don't think Cassie is a prostitute. She was his girlfriend for 11 years. They had a relationship, right? And it was toxic. It was violent. It probably should not have been a relationship. But I mean, look, that's life. I mean, people have toxic relationships. She got out of it. Good for her. She got out of it alive. Good for her. She got out of it with all of her, faculties and her limbs intact. Good for her. Right? And he is suffering some embarrassment. Good for him. What he did was wrong. But no, I can't say that this deserves for him to spend the rest of his life in jail. I don't think that is justice, unless something went on with this Diageo deal that is going to come out later on that will change my mind. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this, you guys? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye.